Hey, what is going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the LA Football Show here in the LA Football Network. I'm your co-host, Ryan Dyer, joined as always by the madman, Mr. Jamal Madney. Another somewhat cloudy week here in the Southland, cooler weather. We're both wearing sweaters. It's end of May, beginning of June, depending when you're listening. Bizarre in a way, but hey, can't complain. It's going to get hot here soon, so we might as well enjoy these cooler temperatures. But Madman, what's going on? How's the week going so far?
Great to see you, brother. It's been a fun week, entertaining as always. And I see our founder and leader, Ryan Dyrud, Rye or Die, wearing the Colorado Rockies hat. So I'm sure he's very excited that he finally now knows who his beloved Denver Nuggets are going to play in the NBA Finals, the one and only Miami Heat, avoiding history and made history. So I got the Nuggets winning pretty easily in this series, Ryan, and Denver's going to have another champion on their hands here pretty soon.
Hey, I hope so. I'd love that, and it'd be a fun way to end the kind of sports calendar year. You know, an Avalanche hockey win last year, and then a Nuggets basketball win this year. I would not complain. So, should be a fun series. But yeah, I hope, like you said, I hope it's a quick one. I don't think my stress levels go into 6 or 7 games. I think 4 to 5 will be just fine for me. Show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. You can bet on that Nuggets Heat series, or if you're into hockey, you got the Florida Panthers. 2 Miami teams of both prowess in the finals. So you got the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights. Promo code BELIEVE gets you a 50% welcome bonus. So some free money for you when you play for the first time. Once again, that's betonline.ag, promo code BELIEVE. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So this is going to be our Charger show. We're going to do all 4 shows similar this week. Here we are, true dead season. You know, you got college football real dead. Obviously, there's big news at USC right now with the AD change. We'll talk maybe a little bit more on that on the SC segment. You know, and in the pros, you got OTAs wrapping up, mini camp coming soon. So we're going to do I don't know what you want to call this, Jamal, just a list of, you know, breakout player, comeback player, like a list of each team, what player we think are going to fit into each award category, if you will. We're going to start with the Chargers. So this will be your Los Angeles Chargers edition of the LA Football Show for all you Chargers fan out there. So we'll get into that in just a second, but you know, it's been a while since we've caught up. Jamal, anything new and exciting in the Madney life you want to share before we jump into it?
Right, it's just another day in paradise here in LA. Obviously excited about the summer coming upon us, and I was mentioning to you, we were chatting a bit offline about how it's wedding season and love is in the air. We're sort of at that stage, me and my wife, where a lot of friends are getting married this summer, so. Some exciting places this summer. You know, we're going to Cabo San Lucas here in a couple of weeks for a wedding for 5 or 6 days, and then ending the summer on the back end, going to Albania. So for a wedding. So, you know, it should be a really fun time. And then there's a third wedding sandwiched in between with some of our dear friends here in Pasadena. So I don't know if you can get a more diverse wedding destination than Cabo, Pasadena, and Albania. But that is sort of my wedding logbook for the summer, so it should be a fun one.
Yeah, very. I mean, anytime you throw Albania in the mix, it's going to diversify the portfolio quite a bit. So that'll be a blast. Jealous of that. Speaking of travel, hope everyone had a great Memorial Day weekend. I was fortunate enough to do a little road trip with the fam out to Colorado to see baby's 3rd child that he just had. So I got to say hi to little Brooklyn, who was 9 days old when we went and saw her. And then we did a road trip through the mountains down to the Grand Canyon. So my wife could see that for the first time. My daughter too, obviously, but she's only 3, so no surprise there. We get camped or glamped, if you will, in a little airstream out in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, Amazing. Jamal. So this was, we get there late. Here's the one story I'll tell before we dive into it. We leave Colorado at like 9 a.m. It says it's like 11-hour drive, the route we decided to take through the southern Rocky Mountains down into Arizona, right past the Four Corners into this where our Airbnb was, or our Airstream we were staying at. Obviously, I have a 3-year-old, so she's a road warrior. She's amazing, but we still had to stop every like 2 hours to either go to the bathroom or her tummy hurt or whatever. So we stopped a lot. Ended up being like a 13-and-a-half-hour drive. So we don't get to this place till 11 p.m. And it's one of those where you're on the main road and then your turn is into like a middle of nowhere dirt road, no lights, no nothing. I'm in my little Honda Civic. We turn off into this dirt road and ended up unfortunately jacking up my car. We made it okay, but it wasn't just like a dirt kind of somewhat paved road. It was like four-wheeling in over these like canyons. In my little Honda Civic, it like shredded the bottom of the car. Our little protector, it tore off. I had to like zip tie it just so we could drive back to LA. But we made it out there into our little Airstream by ourselves in the middle of nowhere and got to see the stars. That was cool, I guess.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And kudos to you, Ryan, for having the fortitude, the wisdom, and the capability of being able to do that. I can only imagine if it were me and my wife in that situation, it would just be, tears of fear and crying out for help. So that's amazing. And so one last thing here, Ryan, you didn't tell me this. Okay. So your beautiful niece, 9 days old, that you went and saw, and her beautiful new name is Brooklyn. So it's Brooklyn Decker. She's named after one of the most beautiful women in the world.
Well, I consider Will Decker like a brother, but it's Brooklyn Dyrud, so it would have been fitting if Will married into the family or something. But yeah, close, Brooklyn Dyrud. And then I also have a friend in Colorado that we saw their baby for the first time, and her name is Brecklin. So Brecklin and Brooklyn, very similar.
Brecklin and Brooklyn. So Brooklyn, I've heard. Brecklin, I have not heard. Wow, that's a very unique name.
It is unique, but I like it. It's, they're from Colorado. I don't know if there was some Breckenridge ties there or what or whatnot, but yeah, fun trip, fun exploring. I'm very proud. It's probably a dumb thing to be proud of, but I'm very proud that my daughter is 3 years old. We were doing the math. She's been on 17 airplanes already, been to 10 states and 2 different countries. So very well traveled. I'm proud that we don't just keep her at home locked away and she gets to, who knows if she'll remember any of it, but hey, I will. That's
amazing. And travel is the greatest form of education, honestly. So that's so blessed there. So many folks can go their whole lives or their whole adult lives or their whole childhood without seeing that many places. So the fact that your daughter is 3 years old and has already done that, my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah. So my one piece of parenting advice for you, as you guys, I'm sure will have kids hopefully soon, you and your beautiful wife, and you guys are both very worldly and well-traveled. So I don't think this will be an issue, but I always tell people, once you have a kid, they are now a part of your life. You are not a part of their life. So yes, there's some things you're gonna have to change. Like don't go clubbing at 2 a.m. Can't be drinking every day of the week. But a lot of the things you don't need to change. You just they're a part of that now, and you figure out how to assimilate and make it better. So if traveling is a part of your daily life, continue doing it. Just bring the kid along. Don't just all of a sudden become hermits that don't do anything. I see too many parents do that. It looks miserable.
Oh my God. No, so well said, Ryan. And frankly, I don't know why we don't just convert this show to like parenting advice in the off season, because frankly, I think the content is even richer, So as much as you know about football, I think you giving the dad advice is even deeper. So,
Well, I always wanted to do a dad pod one day. And back before Mia was born, this is getting way too deep into it, but if we ever have a son, our plan is to name him David after my dad and grandpa. So David Ryan is what we're going to name if we ever have a son. And so I had already planned way back before we had kids, because I was already podcasting. We weren't together yet, but I was like, all right, if we have a son, I'm going to do a new dad podcast. And at the time, I was doing a show. Our show is called The Coach and the Don, and I was the Don. So I was going to do the dad podcast was going to be Davey and the Don. And it was just going to be like a lot of fun.
Davey and the Don.
Davey and the Don, a lot of fun talking dad stuff and kids and humor.
I love that.
So,
Dad, and Daddy Dyrud, so that's, the dad pod in the dad cave with the dad bod, it all works. It all works.
Yes. So you're on the clock. So once you have a kid, then we can launch this dad podcast.
There you go.
That'll be a subset of the LA football show. So anyway, that being said, Chargers talk. Let's get into it. So our list for the listeners and the viewers, Jamal, I'll read it out, but we are going to talk about breakout player of 2023, comeback player, MVP, surprise star. That could be similar maybe to breakout player, but we'll do it a little differently. Surprise cut, make or break season, and the rookie we are most looking forward to watching. So
Love it.
I will let you kick things off with your, I mean, you could pick anyone you want, or we can just go in order and start a breakout player. I'll leave it up
Let's
to
go in
you.
order, right? Let's go in order, you know?
All right. I'm curious how many we will have similar in this. We'll find out.
Probably
So,
not many.
I have a feeling not many. I think there'll be a few probably no-brainers, but all right, breakout player for the Chargers. Who we got?
So Ryan, I think for me, in order for, this team to kind of take the next step in terms of reaching their potential, I think we've talked a lot about some of the pillars and the anchors. But I actually think that Isaiah Spiller is going to be the breakout player for this team. And it's ironic because so much conversation around Ekeler and his contract and is he going to come back and his usage rate and his statistics. But I actually think that less is more with Austin Ekeler in 2023. And I think part of that is preservation for him for a longer run and having some more burst. But I think part of that is they need to sort of change up the dynamism and the dimensionality of their play in the backfield. And I think Isaiah Spiller, for everything that he accomplished at Texas A&M, basically 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons in college, we have yet to see him be an every down back and really sort of galvanize this backfield and kind of allow Austin Ekeler to maybe slide into more of that Ezekiel Elliott type of role that he has had the last couple of years with the Cowboys. And so for those reasons, I think Isaiah Spiller is my breakout player for the Los Angeles Chargers.
I love it. I agree with you. I didn't choose, so I actually chose him for a different category in this list that for very similar reasons, which you'll see. So, but yeah, I totally agree. And his role, can't get much less than it was in 2022. So we'll see. I mean, depending how you define a breakout, if he has like 15 carries, that's a breakout season based on what it was last year. So, yes. But I agree with everything you said, and I'll explain why. Well, no, never mind. We'll wait. I was going to just piggyback it. Okay. So my breakout player, and again, this is kind of, I guess, how you define breakout, because I thought he had a pretty good season last year, but I think now, based on how this offense will take the next step and based on the history of what Kellen Moore does with offenses, particularly this position, and the fact that the Chargers decided not to draft a tight end at all in any 7 rounds, I have Gerald Everett, my guy, General Electric, as your 2023 breakout player. Again, decent season last year. It wasn't like he was some afterthought or not involved at all, but it was kind of hit or miss game day to game day. Some games, particularly at week 1 against the Raiders, it was like, wow, this was one of the greatest acquisitions we've seen the Chargers in a long time. And then there was week-long stretches where he kind of disappeared and was not involved in the offense very much, and then he'd come back. So I think now with this Kellen Moore system, I would say year 2 in the system, it's just year 2 with the team. It's a whole new system, but year 2 with Justin Herbert, I think we'll see him much more involved. I would not be shocked at all if we see him eclipse 900 yards receiving, which he's never done in his career. And that to me would be a breakout as opposed to his usual 400 to 500 to 600 yards per season. If he can get to that 9 range, then I think that's a great season for him. Pro Bowl caliber season as a tight end. And I think it's very doable in this Kellen Moore system.
Yeah, Ryan, I don't doubt it at all. And in many ways, Everett was, under consideration for me for breakout player for many of the reasons that you described. And I think it comes down to his versatility. I mean, he's just not many tight ends are built that way in terms of just pure athleticism. And so when you kind of look at him on paper, it really should be a situation where he has a matchup advantage every time he's lining up. And so for whatever reason, it hasn't completely come together, but he's got the wide radius and the base of a pure traditional textbook tight end, but then he's got the agility, he's got the feet, he's got that yards after the catch knack of more of a wide receiver. And he's this incredible hybrid here. And so if he puts it all together, I mean, this is potentially a star in the making. So for sure, I think I combined them both. Gerald Everett, General Electric, I think could put a jolt into the Bolts.
Yes, I mean, we could go General Everett if you want to, and just make
Everett, absolutely
a new nickname for him. Yeah, so we'll see. I think if both those players have breakout seasons, the Chargers will be in a really good spot, at least offensively. So, all right, sir, your comeback player in 2023. We got some pretty obvious options here and some other very good options. I think there's a lot of potential for comeback players with this team and this roster.
Yeah, Ryan. And I think for me, we call it a cop out or not thinking outside of the box enough. But I just think that for me, in terms of just importance to this team, JC Jackson. And I think if JC Jackson is the JC Jackson of old, the all pro that we saw in New England, it just elevates this team to a whole different stratosphere. And it allows guys to sort of slot down, play nickel, allows Derwin James to just be even more of a versatile hybrid type of player. And it just allows you to do so much when you have so much confidence on one side of the field. And so all indications are that JC Jackson, thankfully, is making great progress and is set up for next season. Really hard to fathom and hard to believe given how gruesome that injury was last year. But for me, if JC Jackson can come back to be an all-pro, I think the sky's the limit for the Chargers. And I think he just gives the Chargers a ceiling that if he plays well, I just don't think there's another ceiling. There's a greater ceiling the Chargers have with any other single individual contributor playing well than JC Jackson.
Yeah, totally agree. I originally was going to put him, and I was like, I feel like Jamal's going to do him, so I'm going to do someone else. But that's the obvious answer based on how big of a signing it was deemed last year. The early career he had in New England, how he was kind of going to bolster this secondary that had some struggles in year one with Brandon Staley, and got a little banged up early on in camp. Didn't really get the chemistry there, and then obviously the big knee injury that took him out for the year. So he is an obvious choice for even comeback player of the year in the NFL, not just the Chargers. If he puts together a good campaign, and just the fact that he might be on the field in training camp is so impressive, and hats off to him for that. So that being said, I went with Joey Bosa, another probably obvious choice.
Okay.
Banged up throughout the year as well. And even when he wasn't banged up, though, Jamal really did not play as good as Joey Bosa can play. I mean, I know he only played in 5 games, but only 8 solo tackles and 2.5 sacks, basically a non-factor, even in those 5 games. And then obviously missed the other, 11 or 12 due to, being banged up and injured throughout the year. So, he's a guy that we've talked about a lot. Like, in order for this defense to really tick, they need Pro Bowl Joey Bosa, and they need a combination of Pro Bowl Joey Bosa and pretty damn close to Pro Bowl Khalil Mack. And then this defense can really get rocking and roaring because, they just need those guys to play like they're capable of. And so A, stay healthy, B, play to his potential. And I think he can get absolutely comeback player of the year for this team, and deservedly so if he can get in that 10.5, 11, 12 sack range. Now, I think Jamal, his highest sack total, I was kind of surprised. I think it's 12.5 sacks is the highest he's ever had in a season. I would love to see Joey Bosa push 15. I mean, there's no reason with 17 games now, with the talent he has, still only 27 years old, having a running mate like Khalil Mack, having the depth the Chargers now have on the defensive interior with Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, Atita Abonia, with Morgan Fox. I mean, they have a lot of talent there that no longer can we say 3 years ago where it was Bosa and just a bunch of dudes. We can say now this is a lot of talent, and it's time for Bosa to play like a top 5 talent at his position. And so hopefully this is the year he gets that and gets that done, and it's going to be great for the Chargers defense.
2 things there, Ryan, and really enjoyed the commentary because it was so spot on. One is, how the game has changed. Where, 10, 15 years ago, we talk about a guy who's getting 12.5 sacks. We're talking about an all-pro. But now when you talk about, like you mentioned, the 17th game, but also just how much more teams are throwing now. And so how many more attempts, a pass rusher is going to get at a sack. Now, all of a sudden, 12.5 is for a talent of Joey Bosa's caliber is considered pedestrian. And so it just shows the evolution of the game. I mean, in many ways, sacks in the NFL are kind of like 3-pointers in the NBA. Just the explosion of that statistic over the last decade to me is staggering. And I think the second point here, Ryan, is if that doesn't give Joey Bosa some fire, I don't know what will. The fact that he's even in consideration for a comeback player of the year should be fire under the belly enough, because when you're saying comeback, you're basically saying that player disappeared for some reason. It could be injury. It could be, personal reasons. It could be just having an off year. It could be a combination thereof. But the fact is that we think of Joey Bosa as quote unquote missing over the last year and a half because of a combination of all of those things. And so when you think about that player, that individual, my God. I mean, if I was Joey Bosa and I even heard that I was under consideration for something like this, it would just strike a fire in me. So this is definitely a big year coming up for Joey Bosa in terms of his long-term viability as a superstar.
Yeah, and the Chargers need it. The other thing that would get me fired up, and obviously it's all love because they're family, but gone are the days when it was, oh, who's better, Joey or Nick Bosa? I think it's pretty consensus. Everyone thinks Nick Bosa is the better brother. And if I'm the older brother, that's enough to be going like, okay, let's not forget about me. I was the 3rd overall pick. I started the tradition at Ohio State. I had Rookie of the Year award, the first one. So I think he needs to get back into that, just beating his brother. And so he's going to need 15 sacks to do that at least.
Well, I think until we get the 15 sacks, this might be controversial, but we're just going to call him Nick Bosa's brother. That's it. I'm retiring the name Joey until the end of the season.
Or at least maybe we'll just go Joe Bosa. We talked last episode. It wouldn't sound right. So he can be Joey again once he at least gets the double-digit sacks. We'll get him back to Joey. So, all right, moving over to MVP. I'm going to guess we might have the same one here, but we'll see. I'll let you go first.
I really try to sort of think differently here and, channel my inner Steve Jobs and, Elon and all these guys. And like, how can I look at this any other way? But the reality of the situation is, Ryan, if Justin Herbert isn't the MVP of this team, it means that this team had a catastrophically bad season. Yep. Just in terms of how this team is configured, the personnel, adding Kellen Moore, the philosophy, what they want to do. So this is and has to be far and away Justin Herbert. And I think I want to take it one step further in that not only should he be Chargers MVP, he needs to sort of make a run to be NFL MVP in 2023 for the Chargers to really take that next step. And that's really the expectation for me. And So it's not Chargers MVP or bust for Justin Herbert. It's NFL MVP or bust for Justin Herbert in terms of the level of expectation that I have given his prodigious talent. And so if really it's anybody else, or even if this is close in 2023, you're talking about a Chargers team that's going to miss the playoffs. So this is Justin Herbert by a landslide.
Yep. I tried to be creative as well, but it doesn't make sense for this team because, unless we're talking about a Keenan Allen that puts up 1,800 yards and 15 touchdowns. And obviously that would be because of Herbert throwing him. That's a different conversation, but Justin Herbert needs to be the best player on this team for this team to reach their goals. It's a very talented roster. I think it's a good coaching staff. I know there's some differing opinions there, but I think overall it's a good coaching staff. They had a pretty solid draft. They've had a decent free agency. And so there's no more excuses now. Now it's if Herbert can play to his potential and level and be in that top 5 QB category, be in that, finalist as an MVP in the NFL, then this team is going to go far because that's just how good they can be. And so he has to be the MVP because that's what's going to make this team be a Super Bowl contender. And that's what they want to be, right? That's what they're going to strive to be. So we'll keep it short and sweet because I don't think there's much needs to be said about that. Moving on to Chargers surprise star. So this is like I said, similar to Breakout, but I think a player that maybe isn't expected to have a very significant impact that we think actually may. So go ahead and take it away, Madman.
Right, for me, and call me a homer or whatnot, but I fell in love with this acquisition the moment that it happened. And I think given Justin Herbert's style of play, particularly in the red zone, and given this player's athleticism and versatility, I think it's going to be Michael Ezike. Michael Ezike is going to be a name you're going to hear a lot this season. And I think that obviously that sort of coincides with Gerald Everett a little bit. But I think this is the year where Herbert's really going to pepper the ball around all over. And I think that Michael Ezike, that unique combination of size and speed, and, you put him on the field with Everett, with some receivers. I mean, it's just a matchup nightmare, particularly in the red zone. And I think folks are going to kind of shade towards Everett and shade towards some of these other weapons. It's going to provide some opportunities for Ezike. I think Michael Ezike is going to have 5 touchdowns this year. And so he's going to be my breakout star for 2023.
Love that. And would not shock me. We've talked when they first signed him that he was an absolute candidate to not just make the roster, but have an impact. And when you look at the tight ends, and the obvious red zone threat is Donald Parham because of his size, but that kind of goes twofold. The defense also knows that that's an obvious red zone threat because of his size. So they hone in on him, and you kind of just basically have the jump ball as your only weapon when using him. And Ezike overall, I think is a better athlete, better route runner, can do more with the ball in his hands. We saw him in that USC game with 3 touchdowns. And he's a guy I was shocked didn't get drafted. And I think that the Chargers scored big time signing him as an undrafted free agent. And I would not be shocked at all if he gets to that, 3, 4, 5, 6 touchdown range, like you said. So very good surprise star there for me. I did this as a surprise based on his last year's production. Probably it's more fitting as a breakout player the way you did it, but I did Isaiah Spiller as our surprise star, and agree with everything you said. Just to add to that, what I will say is Austin Ekeler now, he got his incentives added, but this is the last year of his deal. And based on what happened this offseason, the Chargers are definitely not going to give him another contract at higher than market value, probably going to be much lower than market. We're looking at a second contract where he may be getting $3 million a year. So based on that leads me to believe that Ekeler is going to really test free agency, go out there and try to get a payday somewhere else. So I hope not. We love Ekeler to stay, but having known that in the back of your head, the Chargers are going to absolutely utilize Ekeler this year for his skill set, but they also need to figure out their running back of the future. And they drafted Joshua Kelley. They drafted Isaiah Spiller for those very reasons. And so we're going to, I think, see Isaiah Spiller much more involved in the offense, not only for a run this year, but to set themselves up for the future, knowing going into next year's draft, is Isaiah Spiller the guy, or are we going to look for someone else if the money's not right for what we want to pay Austin Ekeler and he does want to test free agency? So for those reasons, along with everything you said, I think he's definitely going to be a star in this offense. And obviously we know what Kellen Moore does with the 2-back system anyway, so it just makes a ton of sense.
No, for sure, Ryan. And, I don't think we need to belabor this point, but big expectations, great expectations, as Shakespeare would say. So Isaiah Spiller, in many ways, he falls in the breakout category. He falls in the surprise star category. And in many ways, he falls in the make it or break it category. So big things for Isaiah Spiller this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, the surprise cut. This was kind of tough, but this is a loaded roster. I mean, that's not sugarcoat. I mean, this is a very talented, deep roster. I think give the Chargers some credit. They've done a good job building this out. And it's one of the more talented rosters in the league. And that's going to mean not everyone can make the team. And there's going to be guys that get cut that are going to be maybe starters on other teams. We see it every year where that happens. And I think this is the year that happens with the Chargers. So who is your surprise cut?
So, I mean, we've been pretty kind of down the line by our own admission here, Ryan, for the first couple of categories. I'm going to drop the bomb. It's going to be Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's going to get cut.
Whoa.
And it's because for financial reasons. And I think when you draft a guy like Quentin Johnston, agree or not, that high, you've got Mike Williams, you've got Jalen Guyton. We talked about some of these athletic tight ends. You think of Ekeler at this stage in his career as another receiver out of the backfield. There's just so much going around in terms of offensive weaponry that you just wonder, after the injuries that Keenan Allen has had, after all the great seasons and the tread on those tires, does it really make sense? Is the marginal value of keeping Keenan Allen on your team that much greater than the opportunity cost of using that money for other reasons? Most notably, Justin Herbert in the last year of his deal, you have to find a way to get under the cap some way. And so to me, as crazy as that sounds, that's a big cap number that you can kind of get under, make sure that Herbert is secure. And even though this guy was a star on your team the last 5, 6, 7 years and a face of this team, look, the NFL is, a cutthroat business here. And to me, Keenan Allen is kind of in that prime category, right around 30, 31, probably making more than he should in terms of this point. It was a contract based on his productivity then with an expectation of remaining consistent. I don't know if he's going to stay consistent, not because he's not great, but just durability, age. This is sort of prime candidacy here for getting cut. And if you're sort of a forward-thinking executive and an owner, you have to be thinking this way. So it may shock some, but I think Keenan Allen is at the top of the cut list.
Yeah, I mean, that would be shocking. That would definitely surprise a lot of people. I would say is I would not be at all shocked if this happened next year, in the last year of his deal. I know he has a lot of dead money if they were to cut him this year, and just seeing how Tom Telesco and the Chargers do business, that doesn't seem like something they would do. Now, if he was on the Rams, I'd be like, yeah, he's probably gone next week after the June 1st designation. But I absolutely hear everything you're saying, but I would personally be shocked if it happened this year, unless they just felt they could go get a corner, because they are a little thin at corner. That's kind of the one position they could use, bringing back a Bryce Callahan or something like that, and they saw that as a viable reason to eat the dead money, save some cap. I think it's like 12 million this year. Next year, it's like 34 million against the cap. So next year, I would say he's a prime cut candidate next year. Absolutely. So for me, this I don't think would be nearly. I mean, it's surprising just because he's in the rotation, but I don't think it's necessarily it's not a Keenan Allen surprise. I'll say that. And I went with Trey McKitty, tight end, just drafted a few years back. Hasn't really been able to find a true role. They knew when they drafted him, he was more of like an inline blocking tight end, not super gifted as a route runner or, a pass catcher. I think they probably has thought that he would ease into that quicker, and he really hasn't. And because of everything we just said a few minutes ago about Michael Ezike, the undrafted free agent is going to be vying for a spot. I think they'll cut ties with one of their tight ends, and they're not going to cut ties, I don't think, with Everett. I think Donald Parham, the idea of having him fully healthy finally, and just that size discrepancy is too, delicious to think about. And so I think Trey McKitty, just being kind of a one-trick pony at tight end right now, and Ezike can block as well. I think he's a not even necessarily a surprise, but a prime cut candidate for this Chargers team.
I completely agree, Ryan. I really like that one. I think that anytime you're drafting guys, you're picking up guys in free agency that are younger and more versatile than you in terms of your position.
Yeah.
I mean, the antenna's got to be way up in terms of being a possible cut candidate. So completely agree there. And like we talked about, I think the Chargers are also getting into this interesting phase in their offense, especially with Kellen Moore running the attack, where, not to have another NBA analogy here, but what's been kind of the big theme in the NBA the last 5, 6, 7 years? It's been positionless basketball. There's no such thing as a true point guard, a true center, shooting guard, whatnot. I mean, you see Nikola Jokic being a prime example, and he's a point center. And I think that the Chargers are going to be kind of running their offense that way as well, especially at the skill position. I think it's going to be a lot of positionless types of roles. And he's just going to kind of think of things, he being Kellen Moore, as weapons. I think of Austin Ekeler at this stage more as a receiver than a running back, truthfully. I think of Everett as sort of this hybrid receiver running back. I think of other guys in a similar way. And so when you kind of think about it more holistically, then the question becomes, in order for that to work, versatility has to be king. And in any one of those positions, if I'm just kind of a specialist, this is a prime candidate to sort of move on from, given the offensive system that I want to run.
Yep. Well said. Totally agree. And I think that's, as you mentioned, how they're going to look at their entire roster in training camp. And we may see a few surprise cuts based on that. We know Brandon Staley on the defensive side loves versatility anyway. That's been his bread and butter, is, he doesn't call them corners or safeties, it's DBs, and you play all over the place. Now they have that on offense with Kellen Moore. So it's going to be finally this ideology across the entire team that I think is a good way to build your roster, but it also is going to mean some of these homegrown players may not be here anymore. So we shall see. Speaking of may not be here anymore, a lot of players make or break season. Will they be in the NFL after this year? Will they be on the Chargers this year? Who's your make it or break it candidate for the 2023 season?
So, Ryan, this may be a surprise. It may not, but it's a big name. It's Khalil Mack for me. I think it's a make it or break it for him, just in terms of, what do we have? What's left in the tank? I mean, is this a guy that's a genuine star / fringe superstar on a truly contending team? Or is this someone who was just a big name 3, 4, 5 years ago and now is just a rotational piece on a non-rotational contract? And so to me, this is that final year where you find out how much Khalil Mack has left. And frankly, it may just be the final year of Khalil Mack as a bona fide star on a truly contending team. So this is kind of make it or break it, not just for Khalil Mack, but also make it or break it for the Chargers to optimize the window of Khalil Mack being a star. And so for that reason, I just think that the Khalil Mack of 2024 is going to be a radically different Khalil Mack than that of the 2023 version, given age, given productivity, given situation. So for me, it's make it or break it with Khalil Mack.
Yeah, that's a great one. And just to dive into that even more, make it or break it for him on a personal level, but kind of make it or break it for his output for the Chargers, because their depth at edge is not great. I know
Yes.
Tui Pelotu is considered edge. Me and you both agree that I don't think we'll see him at least at his best as a true edge. I think he's better more as that, 3 or 5 tech inline. And then you got Chris Rumpf, and then you got kind of some undrafted guys. So, I mean, he needs for his own sake to have a great year to keep his career and that payday going. But the Chargers need him to have a great year if they want to make a run at this, because they're going to need the production from him and Bosa to be very high level for them to go. For me, make or break it, I went with Kenneth Murray, former first-round pick. So obviously whenever you're a first-round pick, there's a lot of hype around you. He's been up and down through his, first 3 years with the Chargers. He's had to kind of play differently in his own position. So that's, I think, hurt him a little bit in his just adaptability to the NFL, when you kind of shift from being an edge guy, like having to be like a true linebacker, and then you want to be more on pass rush, and then you want to be more in cover, and you don't really know exactly what your role is. And I think this year they were kind of defining that better. But they also brought in Eric Kendricks, who's going to be their starter alongside him, who's a Wiley vet on a 2-year deal. And they drafted Deion Henley, who me and you both think was one of their best draft picks in this draft, the linebacker out of Washington State. So he's going to be pushing Kenneth Murray to start and get on the field as much as possible. And so this may be the last time we see, it's a contract year for Murray. So whether he's on the Chargers or not, or gets re-signed, he's going to be playing for another contract, even for another team. So definitely make or break year for Kenneth Murray to see if he can elevate his game and be considered a good first-round pick or not.
No, absolutely, Ryan. It's funny. The Murray comparison and the Mac comparison, it's basically sort of make it or break it to expectation. For Murray, it's, were you truly a first-round worthy pick? Mac, are you still truly a star? And so it's make it or break it, not necessarily in terms of on the field per se, but these guys are almost fighting prior versions of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of the 2023 version is fighting the 2018 and the 2020 version of themselves. So I completely agree with you, but I think it's sort of an interesting nuance with this particular category.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're obviously rooting for both, and it benefits the Chargers if they do have that make it type season. Final category here, Chargers rookie we are most looking forward to this season. So that could be your rookie of the year candidate, or it could just be some guy you're just really excited to watch lace it up on Thursdays, Sundays, and Mondays. Who you got?
Ryan, I'm, it's a wide receiver from TCU, but it's not the wide receiver from TCU that everybody thinks. I'm most excited to see Darius Davis. And I think for me, when you look at what the needs were for the Chargers at the start of the draft, and if you recall all the different mock drafts we were doing and all the fun we were having there in terms of pre-draft analysis, there was a lot of conversation about the Chargers taking a wide receiver in the first round who really brought a speed element to blow the top off the defense, to really give Justin Herbert a truly worthy weapon that was worthy of his arm strength. And so obviously they went with QJ in the first round there that puzzled some. But Darius Davis is your true burner. And so to see him on the field, obviously he lit up the Big 12 last year at TCU, was a huge piece of them making it all the way to the championship game. Truly kind of the first true Cinderella in the history of the CFP.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see him on the field and to see Herbert be able to unleash that incredible arm to Davis gets me really excited about a very unique dimension there. So I'm excited to see Double D out there in training camp and in the preseason and beyond.
Double D, absolutely a lot of fun. Fans can finally see the juice on offense and hopefully see Herbert uncork it. Will also be fun because he's most likely will be the return guy. So can we finally see some juice in the punt game and the kick game and get some good field position or even some returns in that, which we haven't seen in quite some time. And hopefully he can lock that down. So that's a great one. For me, this is a little bit of a homer pick, but I just loved watching him at USC so much. Tuli Pelotu, can't wait to see his role with this Chargers team. Clearly the best player on the field for USC on defense. Not saying a whole lot last year, but he was actually just really, really good and just so productive. And anytime he needed a big play, seemingly he made it. And, obviously he'll be going against much tougher and stiffer competition in the NFL. We don't truly know what his role will be or will he line up based on his kind of size and being a tweener, if you will, between an edge and a D-line prospect. But either way, just a great young man, great story, LA through and through. So I just can't wait to watch him in the powder blues and see, hopefully he can wreak some havoc his rookie year.
Absolutely, Ryan. I mean, you're talking about the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, the national leader in sacks, and just, a great USC Trojan at a time that was a difficult period in USC football history, but also someone who maximized their ability. Tuipulotu is someone, when you look at him in terms of measurables, when you look at him in terms of strength, burst, speed, quickness, all of these things, it doesn't really necessarily jump off the page in any one category, but still found a way to be such a decorated college player. And on top of that, really, took advantage of his opportunity the most. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's also kind of a lesson to young players. We're always going and chasing after the brand program with the brand coach that's humming at the right time. You wonder, in the case of Tuipulotu, if he was in year 3 or year 4 of the Lincoln Riley regime and getting, where Riley's getting all these 5-star guys from all over the country, does Tuipulotu even really see the field that much? And, is he just kind of a reserve, cog in the wheel type of college player that maxes out his eligibility and walks away? The fact that he was in a Clay Helton regime for the most part and having to deal with the aftermath of the recruiting being a little bit bare and Riley having to rely on these veteran guys in year 1, he got that opportunity that maybe the Pete Carroll USC days he may not have gotten, or the Nick Saban Alabama or the Kirby Smart Georgia, and on the list goes. So it's one of those lessons where he not only maximized his ability, he maximized his opportunity. And sometimes the best opportunity is in situations with programs that are going through some friction and going through some adversity, because it really shows who you are and what your value is in that situation. So I think there's just so many pearls of wisdom there in the Tuipulotu story. And obviously, given that he's an LA local legend in college, rooting for him, and I expect him to do some great things in a Chargers uniform.
Yeah, very, very well said. And that's so much in life. Just like when given opportunity, what do you do with it? And he obviously took it and exceeded it in spades. And you see stories like that all the time in football and sports in general and life in general. And so it's fun to see who he ended up. And I'm super pumped. He's still in LA, so we got to watch him. So I can't wait to watch him on Thursdays, Sundays, and Mondays. So that is going to do it for LA Football Show Chargers edition. Let us know what you think of our lists here. Breakout, comeback, MVP, list goes on. Who had the better list? Jamal and Ryan. You can text Bolts to 31032 or vote below if you're watching this on lafnetwork.com. Let us know what you think. But thank you all for tuning in, Chargers fans. We'll be back next week. Everyone take care. Talk to y'all soon.